Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then available on demand. And we're available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple Television, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Tuesday, January 10, 2023. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ+ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens unique in the LGBTQ+ news, you will see it and hear it.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR, but designed for our LGBTQ+ community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ+ media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 37 years of the LGBTQ+ experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ+ and broader communities.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor Dr. Bobby Huen. Bobby is the owner and principal mediator of BH Conflict Resolution Services. As a certified civil and family mediator, Bobby helps individuals, families, and businesses resolve their legal disputes nationwide. Outside of work, Bobby is a gamer, a Lego builder, a foodie, and an art collector. He is always open to chat if you see him on the drive. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, Al. And so let's welcome anchor Jeff Oliverio. Jeff is the founder and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ+ Council, a unique community civic organization in Greater Hollywood. The council will be hosting the second annual My Hollywood Pride on January 29th, 2023. He is also the co-chair of the 2023 National LGBTQ Task Force Gala. The gala, along with its sister event, Winter Party Festival, has given back more than $3.3 million to local LGBTQ community organizations. Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening. Very happy to be here and happy to be talking about My Hollywood Pride, which is coming up in just less than 3 weeks away. So we're looking forward to welcoming everyone home. Let's welcome anchor Dr. Julio Capo, Jr. He is a history professor and the deputy director of the Wilsonian Public Humanities Lab at the Florida International University. He specializes in the history of race relations and immigration in the United States, as well as LGBTQ+ studies. He is an author of the book, Welcome to Fairyland, Queer Miami Before 1940, and curated a new exhibition called Messages from a Pandemic, AIDS Graphic Communication. Good evening, Julio.
Hey, I'm so excited to learn more about My Hollywood Pride. Looking forward to being here I'm excited to be here with you all. Let's welcome anchor Dr. Tai Houser. He's an associate professor of English and Humanities at Broward College. Additionally, he teaches for extended periods of time at international colleges in China, India, Spain, and Bolivia. Hey, Tai.
Hi, Julio. It's great to be here after a brief hiatus. I'm glad to be back at the table with you all. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines, and we answer the burning question, how many doctors does it take to disagree with Al Ferguson before he concedes a point?
Bring it on. Bring it on.
We are bringing you the headlines. The community, the LGBTQ+ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, January 10th, 2023.
Well, we begin by queering up politics. Does new 118th Congress represent America? The short answer is no, and here's why. Last night, we reported the ominous warning that the MAGA squad, the 20 most radically right of the GOP congressional delegation in the House represents a threat to the LGBTQ plus community. Because of Kevin McCarthy's concessions to this most anti-LGBT group in Congress in order to be elected Speaker of the House, they have newfound power to guide legislation and policy. This is now history and a fact. Queer News Tonight continues our reporting on this brand new 118th Congress. Tonight, we provide analysis on if, regardless of your political party, do they represent America? And especially, do they represent the LGBTQ plus community? The answer is clearly no. The latest Gallup poll, for example, of Congress reveals just 22% of Americans approve of this new Congress. An astounding 73% disapprove. Let's look at other leading indicators of this new 118th Congress. In terms of gender, it far exceeds male representation. Men make up 72% of this Congress, while just 49% of the U.S. population. Conversely, women make up just 28% of Congress and 51% of the U.S. population. In terms of race, it far exceeds white representation. White makes up 74% of this new Congress, while just 59% of the U.S. population. Black is 11% of Congress and 14% of the U.S. population. But the worst of all is Hispanic, which is 10% of Congress, while its U.S. population is nearly double that at 19%. In terms of religion, the numbers get worse. Christians represent 88% of Congress compared to just 63% of the U.S. population. Interestingly, unaffiliated with any religion represents just 0.2% of the 118th Congress, while 29% of U.S. populations say they have no affiliation with religion at all. It will not surprise you that Congress is getting older. The average House representative and senator is 10 years older than Congress was just in 1982. And this 118th is the oldest in history. And that is bad for LGBTQ+, as baby boomers represent the least acceptance of the queer community. And in terms of LGBT, just 2% of Congress represent queer community, while the U.S. population is estimated between 7 and 10%. The dysfunction we witnessed in 15 ballots to get a speaker for the 118th Congress is just the beginning of what the LGBTQ plus community is going to face in the next 2 years. The control of radical voices will be louder and stronger against the queer community, while Congress becomes whiter, more male, more religious, and more Christian. And the 118th Congress is the transition, remember, to the 2024 presidential election, with a GOP candidate that will likely be either Donald Trump or Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis. Does this Congress represent America? The answer seems to be clearly no. And you know, one of the things that jump off the page of this new analysis summary that we do of the 118th is, I'm not surprised the white, I'm not surprised about the male, I'm not surprised about the race. What does surprise me about is religion. The statistic that overwhelmingly more than 2/3 are identifying as Christian. So it's not that you're religious, you've got to be my religion, right, which is Christian. And that equally significant and even more astounding to me is only 0.2% identify as having no religious affiliation, while 29% of all Americans feel that. So that means this overwhelming majority is going to force view as a representative in Congress on people that don't have the same views as they have.
I think I also want to point out that politically, atheism it's almost like talking about Social Security. It's the bloody third rail, because people don't want to think about their representative as quote unquote godless. There seems to be a hang up in American culture that where the lack of religion makes you less trustworthy. It doesn't matter if you worship the flying spaghetti monster, but that's sticking to a religion seems to be a thing.
Or the president at Liberty University, which is basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that if you look at atheists, there's probably a very low propensity for voting, which we know that Christian voters have been pushed to the polls for all of these issues, including abortion. So it wasn't shocking to me to see the overrepresentation of Christianity, because we know that their voters, that is what motivates them to vote, where atheists are probably less motivated by those type of issues.
I mean, I would also take it one step further, that it's not just Christianity, it's evangelicalism, right? Like, so it's also like, if we look at the reflection of how it's mirrored in the U.S. Supreme Court, increasingly with the presence of Catholics on this U.S. Supreme Court, which is not what, like that is that the Supreme Court, much like Congress, doesn't represent what the United States looks like. So that is not just, it's another branch of government now that is also disproportionately not looking like the United States itself.
It was shocking to the United States that Kennedy was a Catholic. Right, back in the day. And now we have Catholics overwhelmingly on the Supreme Court, as you say.
Right.
But the one number, well, first, the Congress has never represented what America looks like, right? And the one number that I would like to see that's not on here has to do with income. What do these people make versus what actual Americans make?
I think
their class,
there's a first Zoomer in Congress. I think it represents Central Florida. And he was just reported that he couldn't rent in DC because his credit was too low. And also, I just want to point out the other thing is that we talk about racial disparity, the misrepresentation, but I also want to point out that just because someone is of a particular color or particular ethnicity doesn't mean that they work towards represent the views of that particular ethnicity. I mean, Clarence Thomas.
I think we were all thinking it.
We got that. It's interesting. The bottom line on our reporting tonight on the analysis of the 118th is we watched the January 6th mess in the 15th ballot, and very likely the representation of what we're going to watch in the next 2 years is not particularly good news for the LGBTQ community, and that's the situation that we're in.
Now let's queer up the worldview. Not so fast, as Canada may not be your great anti-LGBTQ escape plan. Canadian LGBTQ+ community members and advocates say the past year has been difficult and scary amid a notable rise in hate crimes, threats, and protests against drag queens and transgender people in particular. The solution, they say, is educational and support from allies to counter homophobia and anti-trans hate, particularly baseless accusations of pedophilia and grooming children, which they say only feeds threats and acts of violence. In an interview with Mercedes Stevenson, Faye Johnstone, executive director of Wisdom to Action, said, quote, "We are seeing some really great changes in terms of acceptance in society, but most queer and trans people I know are still worried about their safety. I've been doing this work as a queer and trans advocate for a decade. It's never been as scary out there as it is right now," end quote. Similar to the United States, hate has been rising in Canada too. Police reported hate crimes based on sexual orientation rose nearly 60% between 2019 and 2021, to the highest level in 5 years. Statistics Canada reported last month. To those migrating to Canada for LGBTQ+ safety, you might want to rethink your plans and priorities. Canada may not be your great anti-LGBTQ escape plan. I was going to say that's cold.
What are you going to do now, Jeff? What are you going to do now?
Well, as they say in Canada, this is a big problem. But this hate is being pushed across to all borders. We're seeing it in Brazil. As a mirror image of things that are happening here in our own country. So it's not shocking to see this happening. And also, again, I think that when you put hate out there into the world, it spreads, whether it's anti-Semitism or it's against the LGBTQ plus community.
I mean, the fact that during the pandemic, we get a lot of conspiracy thinking that sprouts out and spread on the internet. And also from the global point of view, the rise of the right-wing governments and right-wing and politicians has coincided with scapegoating LGBTQ people. If you think of in Europe, Poland, in Hungary, or, the rise of conservative movements here in the United States and Canada, all of them was looking around to see, which one we can beat up the best. And, LGBTQ people always comes first.
In a lot of ways, we're behind the 8 ball here because for a long time we were looking for acceptance, tolerance, and those kinds of emotions from people instead of promoting education and knowledge. Because now that we're shifting our focus and we realize that's really what people need, the disinformation is already out there. The bad information is already there, and we're sort of playing catch up to that.
This is such an important story because it leads to, it's a global phenomenon. And I feel like when we kind of isolate it and to think in terms of like, oh, this is the United States or even Brazil. I mean, we've seen this in parts of lots of Latin America, in the Caribbean, in Europe, in parts of Asia. It's certainly not unique to the United States. And if we even look at parts of history, when we see rises of conservatism, we also see a clear parallel to economic recession, economic instability and insecurity. So those two often go hand in hand, which also makes us think that things may not be getting better, soon. We have to prepare ourselves for the battles ahead because, things aren't.
So who's eating my lunch is kind of the mindset of a lot of people, attacking.
I just have to say before we move on to Bobby, the story does surprise me a little because I listened to you, Julio, and saying, historically around the world, this is the kind of thing that we've seen before. I don't know what it is about me that want to say, but not in Canada. Canada is an exception to this rule of this kind of milquetoasty, we're okay, we don't talk too loud, we don't talk too soft. We're kind of just right in the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And this is a little disappointing to me because it can happen there too. And if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere, and I don't know, it's just disappointing to me.
They're mad that we have Bieber.
Yeah.
Do we want Bieber though? Do we?
We have him, but maybe they're mad about it.
They also have Katie Lang, Michael Myers, Ryan Reynolds.
I love Alanis Morissette.
Right.
Actually, I love,
Okay, let's clear up sports. What sports, Al? What is this thing called sports? Okay. San Antonio Spurs Pride Night owner bemoans idiot leaders in Texas. Saturday marks the second time in franchise history the Spurs have held a Pride Night in support of San Antonio's LGBTQ plus community, and Greg Popovich was proud of it. The Spurs coach said that Pride Night will help San Antonio become more accepting of LGBTQ plus people. Last year was difficult for the LGBTQ plus community as it dealt with conservative lawmakers in several states, including Texas, introducing dozens of LGBTQ plus measures. Violence against LGBTQ plus people also increased, culminating with a gunman killing 5 people at a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs in November. In Texas, the GOP adopted a new platform at its state convention that refers to homosexuality as abnormal and, quote, opposes all efforts to validate transgender identity. End quote. Speaking at his pre-game news conference before the Spurs hosted Boston, Popovich said the legislative attacks against the LGBTQ plus community are part of an effort nationwide by idiot leaders to curtail the rights of the marginalized. He said, and I quote, "We have gone backwards in a lot of these areas, whether it's LGBTQ rights or voting rights or women's rights, the environment," end quote. The Spurs held their first Pride Night in December 2021. The franchise, throwing its considerable weight behind the LGBTQ plus community, could help San Antonio become a more inclusive city. Advocates for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer rights said at the time. I think, look, a lot of people criticize Pride as like corporatized, you know, subsumed by huge corporation organizations that's become soulless. But I think when entities like these, big sports team, big corporation back us up, I think it's a great thing. I think it is a sign that says that they are not afraid of the backlash. They're not. That means that the majority of Americans, or their consumers anyway, accept the fact that they like LGBTQ people, and I think that's important.
And both things could be true too, right? That it's like we could be really cautious of you know, the way that, you know, Pride could easily become like a, you know, a corporate, you know, whatever, right? But right, pinkwashing, but like also, I mean, it's so incredibly necessary to, I mean, we see the rise of anti-LGBT acts and violence with the rise of the rhetoric itself, of the legislation. And I have to say another, like this story makes me happy for 1,000 reasons. And one of them is that the idea of any kind of sports team taking this kind of position. San Antonio is also, like Miami, for example, another Latino majority city. Its politics are often kind of, you know, it's right. So like to look at this as kind of being, when we say like it's going to be a progressive city, it already is grappling with so many key questions about race and ethnicity on a daily basis. For it to kind of incorporate further questions about gender and sexuality in these really high profile spaces is really important.
And Popovich has been a vocal critic of the governor of Texas in the past, and I salute him because again, he's putting himself out there and taking a big risk. I can imagine here in,
you know, it's funny that
Florida.
you say that because exactly when the owner of the Spurs uses the word idiot, and you clearly know he's applying it to the Attorney General of Texas and he's applied it to the governor of Texas. Oh, what's the difference basically than what Disney did to DeSantis? There are consequences.
Yes.
You have fights. We're going to talk about that tonight. But there's bravery in that. The other thing that I think is interesting, onto the piggyback of your point, this is not a natural area of LGBT allyship.
Right.
We want our allies, but this is not a lane that we normally see it. First, it's a sports team. And sports in the masculinity and the potential of toxic masculinity can be difficult for LGBT. He fights that. Sports teams like this are significantly made up of people of color, and especially in Black community, that has not always been a natural from straight Black community and embracement, because of Black church probably historically has not been an embracement of LGBT community. Latino in terms of machismo, of what we have seen in Latin and South America in terms of their slower embrace of LGBT. So in all aspects of this instance, this is brave. And once you add the business to it, he's going above and beyond for the community of San Antonio, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we want to call out, Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, who are just doing on a daily basis. I feel like I read a story about what they're saying and putting out there into the universe to protect their family from attacks, and also making a statement about LGBTQ equality. So,
before we move on, I just love that you folded that in, because I was going to sit here silent of going, I wonder if I'm the only person in the at the table that knows what the Spurs does in their sport. But
Please. All right, let's queer up education.
Please.
Florida county schools issue new bathroom policy based on sex at birth, assigned at birth. Pasco County students will soon be required to use school bathrooms and locker rooms based on their sex assigned at birth. County Superintendent Kurt Browning announced the new policy, citing a court ruling from last month in St. Johns County. In that case, the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals backed a district policy that stopped a trans male high school student from using the boys' bathroom. Pasco students who don't want to use the bathroom aligned with their sex assigned at birth will be able to ask for accommodations to use a single-stall private restroom. LGBTQ+ advocates worry the rule will be harmful to transgender and non-binary students' safety, health, and well-being, and they question how it's going to be enforced. At Tuesday's school board meeting, LGBTQ advocates who were dressed in purple pleaded with the board not to change its bathroom policy. Equality Florida spokesperson Brandon Wolf said, quote, "That ruling doesn't compel any district to abandon any policies for transgender students. The only thing that the court case did is say that districts have the discretion to provide that kind of spaces for students that they deem fit. The decision by the superintendent in Pasco is discretionary decision to not provide access to facilities in schools that are affirming transgender and non-binary students," end quote. Goodness, this is, I really appreciate the statement from Wolf here, who, by the way, is a survivor of Pulse and has become such an important spokesperson for so many different causes. But it is a misreading of, as we understand it, no doubt, of that. And I think this is so incredibly dangerous. We've learned, I mean, this is a slippery slope of how easily it is to, in this climate in particular, to deny people access to basic needs. And it really does put lots of people at high risk, right?
I mean, as a parent who sits here with a child in high school, the last time I've heard any news story about a Board of Education across the state of Florida talking about things like reading, writing, math, scores, it's been a really long time. And if I looked last, I don't know what the ranking is, but I didn't see Florida as #1 on the list. So I would challenge Florida educators to focus on education and less focus on where people are peeing.
But the problem here is not the educators. Educators are the frontline people. They are the principals. They are the teachers. These are not those. These are the politically elected supervisors and board members who are imposing their political ideology on the education system, specifically to inflict cruel and unusual punishments on the LGBTQ community. They don't care about the quality of education. They just want to inflict pain on the gay and lesbian, transsexual and bisexual students.
So when I was in high school, we didn't even have doors on the stalls. Like, it was that much of what do I want to say? That little of concern to the administration. But my thing is, why are we becoming more and more concerned with what's happening in bedrooms and in bathrooms and in private spaces across the country? Where is Freud when we need him? Like, I want to go back and understand our obsession with what's going on there. Can't people just have a space to relieve themselves?
You know, it's funny because I really think that is probably the bullet point of the entire argument of what we're watching and what they're doing. The answer, however, I don't think is the answer that you would be looking for, because the answer has nothing to do with peeing in a bathroom. The answer of the why is because I'm going to win elections by 1,000,009 votes for governor and U.S. senator in the state of Florida, because these type of culture wars rile a base, spill over the base into those that think that they're more independent-minded, but somehow they've characterized that my parental rights are being taken away, and so therefore I believe it, and I'm voting for the crazy governor and the crazy senator. And I think, honestly, that that's the answer to the question. And if that is true, then I think our obligation is to figure out how we're going to deal with that particular problem. Our advocacy, with all due respect to Wolf from Equality Florida, our organizations, our advocacy organizations are going to have to redefine what we're doing in Florida, or we're not going to even be in the fight. And we're currently not even in the fight. So it means we can't approach it the way we did 4 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 10 years ago, because it is not successful.
You know, just to provide a slight glimmer of hope to end this, because I'd like to think about how we can best move forward, right? It also reminds me a little bit what happened in North Carolina, right? I mean, that is, it's certainly moving in that kind of direction. That was a government, like that is a statewide ban and very clear, what was known as the bathroom bill. And once it started hitting them in the pocketbooks, right? Like that is, once it started hurting them financially, North Carolina really did have to change some of its policies. And I wonder, I mean, this is what the the kind of Disneyfication of these debates currently in Florida, and what this is going to look like for a tourism-dependent state like Florida and many other things. But that is, how is this going to affect money? Like, I mean, it's going to be a big part of this equation.
It is.
All right, let's continue, and we will queer up the worldview. Russian LGBTQ+ group shut down by Putin is back from the dead. Russia's biggest LGBTQ+ organization is back, less than a year since Vladimir Putin's government forced it to close, suing it for acting under foreign influence as part of a crackdown on gay rights. The organization's head, Delia Gafronova, told the Daily Beast that the Sphere Foundation is now running and it will have to operate unlicensed or the government will refuse to register the group, which was established as a new body on January 1st. Gafronova said, quote, "As somebody heading Sphere, I really would not have blamed anyone at the time who'd wanted to leave. We already had put up a good fight, had a good run while we could. I mean, we were the ones who supported the LGBTQ+ movement across Russia for over 11 years, and some members of our team had been public doing advocacy and awareness, raising work, and therefore were running high personal risk, but very few did leave. Our core team is preserving itself," end quote. Despite the inability to pay salaries for the last 3 months and having an uncertain future, Delia and her team have continued their work under the radar since September. On December 5th, Putin signed a law that expanded Russia's restrictions on what it calls LGBT propaganda. According to the new law, any action or spreading of any information which is considered an attempt to promote homosexuality in public, online, or in films, books, or advertising could result in a heavy fine. This is, again, straight out of a Putin playbook. We know this is coming. I think the best thing that I can do right now is to remind folks that if you know someone or if you are someone who is living in a state that is threatening your life, there's a great charity out there called the Rainbow Railroad that can help you. So if you need to Google it, but that certainly is a way to possibly get out of those situations.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think there's also another reminder that when the right-wing regimes tend to start to fall apart, the first thing they're going to look for is a scapegoat. Again, the LGBTQ community becomes a front line. And this is a playbook that Russia has been spreading. Actually, in fact, I would say that Russia is the pioneer of that playbook in the last 10 years. They are the ones who spread it to Poland, to Hungary, to us via the Republican Party. It is.
But also, who are we kidding? As we read that law, for example, that Tai read for us, it could easily just be a DeSantis law. It could easily be like
absolutely.
I mean,
we're doing this story. I'm thinking, gosh, this just is so familiar.
I mean, DeSantis might want to, but this won't fly even in the most conservative.
And the attacks on drag performances don't look unlike.
I challenge that observation.
And shutting down businesses is something that DeSantis is attempting to do, with our house and the drag show. I mean, they're trying to take away their business, their liquor license.
Again, there are similarities, though the distinctiveness is that DeSantis would love to have the kind of power that Putin has. That's the difference.
That's the difference.
I think the observation of it would not fly here, the courts might stop it, et cetera, and so on, while that may be true, I think when you evaluate the decision-making of those that create the law and govern the land, which is what Ron DeSantis is doing, Abbott in Texas and others, is would they want to be Putin?
Yeah.
And would they want to implement law and policy the way Putin has? And my reaction is honestly, and trying to be as non-political as that would possibly be, which would be very difficult, is I really think that they would like to do that. They would like to pass a law that says this is completely propaganda, and that's really what is going on in the schools. But we can't say it to that degree, and we can't enforce it to that degree. But it's not a question that that's not what he wants, because it is what he wants. All right, well, next we are going to queer up Florida and South Florida. Florida LGBTQ+ Democratic Caucus holds winter conference to say, let's change Florida. The 2023 Winter Conference of the Florida LGBTQ plus Democratic Caucus is here, and it's going to be held at the Renaissance Airport Hotel in Orlando to say, let's change Florida. The conference will be held from Friday, February 24th through Sunday, February 26th. The in-person event with a virtual live stream option will bring together activists, allies, advocates, candidates, elected officials, and policymakers for a weekend of planning and networking. The importance of this event increases after the 2022 midterm elections. The conference says we must rise up together now more than ever here in Florida. Stephen Gaskell, president of the Florida LGBTQ plus Democratic Caucus, said, quote, "The contrast of visions for Florida cannot be any starker. While Democrats work to lift up and support the diverse community of Floridians, Republicans shamefully hurt their own constituents with culture war attacks designed to distract from Republican inaction or economic issues," end quote. In addition, the conference will host a membership meeting and a Saturday evening cocktail reception. It will close on Sunday morning with a farewell drag brunch featuring local drag queens. There is no charge to register for the membership meeting. However, registration is important. Conference registration includes the Friday welcome reception, Saturday's continental breakfast, and Saturday's lunch. The tickets are available on lgbtqdems.org. I've done 4 or 5 of these conference meetings, caucus meetings in Florida. They're incredibly important. I don't think ever more than today, because frankly, in the midterm elections, with all of the hope, we talked about it over and over and over ad nauseum. You and I talked about it over and over and over at Queer News Tonight. The Democrats got their asses handed to them in the midterms. The fortunate thing is not nationally as badly as in Florida. Does that mean DeSantis and Marco Rubio are better than the rest of the nation?
No.
Or we're just a little crazier here?
Right.
That verdict is still out to decide. But one of the things that I think is important this week, we were discussing this, Manny Diaz, who has spoken at multiple of these LGBT conferences, has resigned and should have. The one shame of his announcement this week of resigning is he didn't do it 2 months ago when the midterms were so fresh. Mm-hmm. He has led Florida and the Florida Democrats into literally a burning barn and closed the door behind himself. That needs to change now. And if 2024, oh goodness, in January of the second week of January, are we talking about 2024 yet? Mm-hmm. Let's try not to, maybe. But at the end of the day, we know what's coming. Donald Trump's coming from Florida, or Ron DeSantis is coming from Florida. So where is politics in 2024 going to be front and center in America? Florida. And we sit right in the front of it. And we have one for sure that is going to use the LGBTQ community as the crushing blow to show America, here's what a culture war gets you. Maybe the President of the United States. This caucus is very important.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to see that he resigned. I think there's other Democratic organizations that also need to have some exorcisms out there.
Exorcisms, that's a great way to
because I do think that, having a conference is great, but we need people that are real activists that are on the ground. I would say here in South Florida, an organization like SAVE was much more present for the election than any other Democratic organization that I saw. And that's not what should be happening. We need to have an actual organizing body of the Democratic, not just LGBTQ, but yes, LGBTQ in addition, need to be more organized and have a vision for how to get voters out. And not just LGBTQ voters that support LGBTQ people.
Exactly right.
And
our allies.
And allies. And sometimes I think that, at a conference like this, and we've all been to these events, we're preaching to a choir, and that's not who we should be talking to, in my opinion.
And I think more importantly, we need to reach out as a Democratic Party in general. We need to reach out more to a more diverse electorate. I mean, Ron DeSantis won Miami through the Hispanic vote. Oh yeah, no question. So what are we doing wrong there? Why are the Hispanic community running against us? I mean, some of it can be chalked up to historical and cultural factors, but we are also letting, Hispanic evangelicals and Hispanic talk radio, and we have to spread misinformation and propaganda, and we have nothing to counter them.
And just one other thought. We're going to go on and talk about Disney, but one other thought. The reason why they're successful at that is the Democrats and maybe the LGBTQ community do not do a good job of the game bullshit and playing the game bullshit. We don't do a good job of going bullshit. We've seen this in Florida over and over and over again. Okay, the Republicans have an 8-seat majority now in the House. All right, they have the majority. What is the exact first thing that the MAGA squad, who talks about fiscal conservative, balancing the budget, cutting back military spending, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is the first thing that they're going to introduce? They're going to introduce, besides the political stuff,
cutting the IRS.
The first thing that they're going to do is attack the IRS moves. And the moves of what they're going to do on the change of the IRS has, according to the Congressional Budget Office, which is non-political and independent, says that change will increase the deficit between $140 and $164 billion. That's the first action the economic hawks want to do. Lie, win the election. Bullshit. And we need strong leaders to help educate the populace and the voting public and the LGBTQ community and all of the related ally groups that we have to go, this is what they're doing, and they're doing it for their own power and their own money, and you lose. And that's what, to me, when you say that, you hit a bullseye, but that's what we don't do.
And Republicans, as you said, have become very the party of lower income voters. And lower income voters, the IRS isn't coming for you. They're coming. So they
started an enforcement over $200,000.
But they're easy to scare. That's the point.
Yeah, like you're not the target of the IRS, and I think on that same news story about that, it's that the amount of audits for millionaires has declined by some astronomical number.
But you've got to give it to them. They've sold it so well.
Yeah, and lower income people think, oh, the IRS is going to come for me. You don't have any. There's no reason for the IRS to come for you.
You don't make enough.
All right, we're up to you, Jeff. We're going to talk about Disney.
Let's queer up business. Florida GOP now plans to take over Disney in feud over Don't Say Gay. Florida lawmakers will move to increase state control of Walt Disney World's private government. The notice posted on the Osceola County website says the Republican-controlled State House will take up legislation changing the structure and powers of the Reedy Creek Improvement District, as the 55-year-old Disney government is known. A bill has not yet been filed detailing exactly what changes will be under consideration. The notice serves as a procedural step in what has become a closely watched process between Disney and Florida Republican governor. Ron DeSantis last year signed legislation that would dissolve the Disney government in June 2023, a move aimed at punishing the company for its public opposition to a law that bans instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in kindergarten through third grade and lessons deemed not age appropriate. Additionally, Disney said it would suspend political donations in the state and that it would support organizations' work to oppose the education law. DeSantis and State House Republicans slammed Disney, saying the entertainment giant had become a purveyor of so-called woke ideologies that are inappropriate for children. The squabble marked a rare moment of discord between the state and Disney, one of Florida's largest employers and a major political donor. The notice also says the legislation would intend to increase state accountability of the district, change how its governing body is selected, and revise permitting and rules, the district's regulatory frameworks, among other things. Listen, the CEO of Disney, I think, suffered because of this and was ousted, and they brought back the former CEO, and he had I think this was a big part of that, to kind of mend fences with DeSantis. So, I think, again, this is another stunt by DeSantis more than anything. But again, it gets him headlines.
Actually, I think it's the opposite.
Yeah.
The previous CEO, Bob Chapek was a lot more accommodating. He was actually silent when
exactly
first passed.
He was the quiet one.
He was the quiet one. Bob Iger is more of a fighter. Bob Iger actually was welcomed back with open arms by the LGBTQ cast member.
Oh, yes.
And he will punch DeSantis, like rhetorically. He will punch DeSantis. This is not he is what he is afraid of. He is a highly successful CEO leading $1 billion company. You know, don't screw with Disney. Disney's
one of the issues that is also made clear in this article is DeSantis says that there will be no additional funding, and there's no reason that this will change anything. But that de facto cannot be the case, right? You're going to have additional fire services, additional police services.
Republicans lie.
Yeah.
And where did the money come from? That's the question, right? He is trying to, DeSantis here is trying to work a move where the Reedy Creek district, because the Reedy Creek district, if it actually dissolves later this year, everything, including the bonds, will fall onto the residents of those two counties, Orange and Osceola, which will jack up their property taxes to astronomical level. And Ron DeSantis is like, no, that's not going to be the case. We're going to start something new. We're going to set up new government so that we can control Disney. You can't control Disney anymore. I mean, what are you going to do? Ban them? Like stop them from constructing another roller coaster if you don't like their politics?
You know, I don't want to say I'm going to disagree with you, but I'm going to disagree with you. And the reason I do is I put a couple of ominous warnings. This story may be one of the really gigantic stories of 2023.
I agree.
Yeah.
And the reason is first, he has a supermajority in the House. And when they meet, if they figure out, well, we're going to do X or Y to cover the problem that you just outlined, and whatever kind of way that they're going to try to do that to cover up the objection that you just did, they're going to do it. And there's no one that's going to stop them because they have the supermajority. So all DeSantis has to do is to the House and Senate, this is what I want to do. And they're going to rubber stamp it, and he's going to get whatever he wants. The second thing is this is for LGBTQ community and Florida, and really for the future of the United States in the short run. This may be the moment. Reedy Creek may be what gets Ron DeSantis elected president of the United States. Because it's exactly what you said. He's going to take on, it's not $1 billion company, it's a $50 billion company, and he's going to take them on front and center, and he's going to say, see, woke comes to die here, and that includes Disney. And I don't think we understand, I know y'all do, but I don't think many of us in community understand Reedy Creek. Reedy Creek is probably, in American history, many argue, I'm not going to argue the defense of it, but many argue that it is the most successful public-private partnership in the history of America. What did it do? It allowed Disney to build Walt Disney World, to purchase secretly in various different ways 48,000 acres, like 50 square miles of land in Central Florida, and then operate like a municipality as a private business. That's really what Reedy Creek is all about. And it allowed them to grow and grow and grow. The tax base grew and grew and grew, but they did not have to deal with the silly city commission and the silly building permits department and the silly county commission, et cetera, and so on. Reedy Creek gave them exception. The most successful public business partnership, arguably, in American history. Some have argued, I saw a course section at Harvard Business School, that they argue it's the most successful public-private business relationship in the history of the entire world, Reedy Creek. DeSantis is going to dismantle it, and he's going to dismantle it first because he wants to, and second, because he can, and third, he wants to be president of the United States. The more he takes on Disney, the better it is for him. It may be the issue we're talking about in 23 leading into 24. He dismantled Reedy Creek, the most successful public-private business enterprise in history. And DeSantis did it. And there's going to be this whole sea of people in America going, cheer, cheer, cheer.
I rarely say this, but I agree with you.
Scary.
I can't disagree with you either. It is, I mean, Ron DeSantis is yielding outsized power in Florida in general.
But I'll also say, and I mean, I'm sure, I wonder if you I also think that if this doesn't work for him, and then this could also be his big downfall. It's a very ballsy move.
It is. It's a teeter. I really think Reedy Creek could be the gigantic.
It's that kind of.
It could. He could live and die on that sword.
Yeah.
Either way, I don't know.
Well, next, let's queer up South Florida and Florida. And we are going to talk about My Hollywood Pride. My Hollywood Pride will welcome you home. Hollywood's annual Pride event returns to downtown Hollywood. Join them for family-friendly activities, music, art and culture, and much more. Visit the venue on Sunday, January 29th from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. After a hugely successful inaugural event, My Hollywood Pride returns for its second year. It is an event to celebrate you. The chosen theme for this year's event is Welcome Home, to guide the community for 2023. Over the last couple of years, Florida has been a leader in LGBTQ+ legislation. And as a result, LGBTQ+ people, especially the youth, are the target of unfair and unequal treatment. LGBTQ+ people have long created their own chosen families in the face of adversity and marginalization. With that in mind, the festival invites the community to come together in welcoming each other home and to remind everyone that we are stronger together. Get more info at myhollywoodpride.com. Okay, so confession, I have been a bad gay since I never actually...
Bad gay.
Yeah. I've been a bad gay since I did not
How many bad gays are at the table?
Hollywood Pride exists.
I'm very good at it.
I'm A+.
I did not even know that Hollywood has a pride. I did not know that it was a thing.
Well, we'll welcome you home anyways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you, Jeff. So, Jeff is right here.
Almost where you can get some shade.
Exactly. Wait, you live like 12, 13 miles from Hollywood Boulevard?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Hey,
That
I
was
live
the shady
above.
kind of read.
I'm sure we'll be seeing lots of Broward College students there because obviously we have a campus just down the street.
We do.
From downtown Hollywood. So
We have a lot of community organizations joining us, so that's great. We have participation from a lot of the colleges and universities. Safe Schools South Florida and the Quadrachi Cabrera family is our presenting sponsors, and we're really making a huge push for youth programming. Last year, that was one of the most unique components of it, and we're really happy to extend that this year. We're having live music for the youth. We're having a whole bunch of different organizations, from Pride Lines to the Miami Dolphins to Big Brothers Big Sisters, all doing different components of the youth programming, in addition to all of the things that we all love, which is entertainment, music, drag performers. We have an after party tea dance and a brunch on Saturday to celebrate our second time in a row getting a 100 on the Municipal Quality Index.
Wow.
So
Jeff, will you be wearing a harness and a thong, or
family friendly?
Oh, okay.
Actually,
There is-
your joke. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in on you. Your joke is actually what is so interesting about my Hollywood Pride. I have been around since the dinosaurs walked the earth, and I have been to a few million prides over a few million years.
It checks.
It's interesting to me because when I went last year for the first time, the one thing, Faye and I went together and we talked about this afterwards, and we talked about it extensively, and I'll just repeat now. My Hollywood Pride surprised me. And at the end of the day, I go to all of these LGBT events. I'm never surprised. I've seen it before. Please, thank you. I've seen it. I love it. It's wonderful, but I've seen it. And what surprised me at my Hollywood Pride is it's a street festival where the street, Hollywood Boulevard, is blocked. There's a main stage. There's entertainers, local entertainer after entertainer after entertainer. When I say local, I mean South Florida, and vendor booths. And there are people. But you see lots of straight people come. You see lots of children are present. It was so refreshing because, a Stonewall. I love Stonewall, and there's Pride Fort Lauderdale, and there's Miami Beach Pride, and there's going to be Orgullo in the Latino Festival at Gay 8. But this is completely different from that. And it should be completely different from that, because everything doesn't, you make a joke and you're only making a joke, but everything doesn't have to be
Tai.
Right. No, I appreciate it. Tai and I hang out. We completely are on the same page here. But it's really, really interesting, and why you should give it a try. You should come to My Hollywood Pride, because I don't know who came up with the moniker of Welcome Home. It's a perfect theme. Perfect, because whether you're a resident of Hollywood or not, welcome home. And you're in this street festival, and just the vibe of the people around you, the entertainers on the stage. There's not going to be an international performing RuPaul star, a DJ, et cetera, and so on. You're going to enjoy the experience, and they implement it from start to finish. It's really worthwhile.
I think it's great because, Tai's joke aside, a lot of prides are, booze and thongs. Booze and harness and thongs, and guys with, wearing very, very little clothing. And so a family-friendly event that celebrates diversity is always welcome, and Hollywood might have found a niche.
The lineup is great too. I'm really excited, and I'm thank you for putting this, together.
Yeah, we're really lucky. Velvet Lenore is serving as our host again,
awesome.
And I can't speak more highly
make sure we said her
about
clearly. Velvet Lenore. Right.
Cannot speak more highly about Velvet and what she has done to elevate the event, and really been a partner. Versus just someone that we've contracted to be there. Awesome. Been a great partner.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to it. We're going to talk a lot about it over the coming weeks. But don't forget, tell us the date again.
January 29th, 2023.
1 to 6 p.m.
Downtown Hollywood, Florida.
Brunch on Saturday, the day before, after party at 6. Don't you love the tea dance? Okay, we're going to call it the tea dance. But the big after party starts not at 11 p.m. It's 6 p.m. I love that.
That's like a dream for me. That sounds amazing.
We'll have you home before the nightly news at 11 p.m.
Done and done.
Yeah, ready for work on Monday.
Hollywood Pride.
All right,
done
be there.
And done.
Be there.
You can do it on a school night.
Right.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m. with more than 30,000 people watching every week.
Former American Idol contestant and singer-songwriter, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Well, we're going to finish tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News. In LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News, let's queer up politics. From LGBTQ plus news partner, LGBTQ Nation and Alex Bollinger. Will Pete Buttigieg run for Senate now that the seat has come open? With Senator Debbie Stabenow announcing that she will not seek re-election in 2024, the internet went ablaze with speculation that out Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg could run and become the first out gay male U.S. Senator. Since Buttigieg is still widely believed to have a presidential ambition, the question is what his next step will be. Being the first out gay cabinet secretary has provided him with invaluable D.C. experience, but the position of transportation secretary isn't really a traditional stepping stone to the White House. You can read much more at LGBTQnation.com.
LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News. Let's queer up education. From LGBTQ plus news partner The Pink News and writer Maggie Baska. Florida high school students say their play was shut down over Don't Say Gay law. Students at Douglas Anderson School of the Performing Arts, a magnet high school in Jacksonville, were set to perform Paula Vogel's play, Indecent, starting on March 1st. Cast members of Douglas Anderson School of the Performing Arts production of Indecent said they were told by school administrators that the production was being canceled because of the script's content. High school students allege the shutdown was an act of anti-LGBTQ+ censorship because of Florida's Don't Say Gay law. Duval County Public Schools told the Pink News that the show's cancellation was related to its, quote, adult sexual dialogue, end quote, rather than Florida's Don't Say Gay law. Read more about this story at thepinknews.com.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News, let's queer up entertainment. From LGBTQ+ news partner Queerty and writer Cameron Sheets. Here are the most anticipated LGBTQ+ shows of 2023. 2023 is primed to be an exceptionally gay one. Over the next 12 months, we've got the return of some of our favorite comedies and buzzy LGBTQ+ inclusive premium cable dramas. Here's a list of our 15 most anticipated TV series headed to your screens this calendar year. Doctor Who's 15th Doctor, Fellow Travelers, Gen V, Glamorous, Hacks Season 3, Heartstopper Season 2, Our Flag Means Death Season 2, Ripley, RuPaul's Drag Race Goes Global, The Idol, The Last of Us, The Other Two Season 3, They Both Die at the End, True Detective, Night Country, and Yellow Jackets Season 2. Read more at Queerty.com. So that is today's news for the LGBTQ+ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ+ evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ+ news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ+ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
You know, this is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ+ stories in motion and in sound. That's the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ+ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Dr. Bobby Huen, Jeff Oliverio, Dr. Julio Capo Jr., and Dr. Tai Houser. A lot of doctors here tonight. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ+ world, we wish you
Good night.
LGBTQ+ news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ+